where Maria will be standing. So welcome to this artist talk by curator, producer, programmer, dramaturge, Maria Magdalena Schwaegermann. My name is Jo Pickup, I'm the producer at STRUT Dance, and we're just delighted to be hosting Maria here in Perth for the next week or so. She's travelled a long way to be with us, all the way from Berlin, where she's based. So we're very pleased that she'll be working with some of our members here, obviously independent WA choreographers. She'll be working with them in a series of clinics and conversations, really designed to help them better analyse their practice, better understand their choreographic practice, and really to enhance their ability to kind of see their own work, something that I guess as creatives becoming embedded in their process, it's just so valuable to have that expert outside eye to be able to work with them. So yeah, we're just, it's not often we really have this chance to draw on the knowledge and the skill of somebody with such amazing international expertise. So it's just a wonderful opportunity. As I mentioned, Maria is primarily a curator and a performing arts producer. She's worked as artistic director for the Zürcher Theater Spectacle Performing Arts Festival in Switzerland from 2001 to 2007 as artistic director, as I said. And from 1989 to 2003, she was the deputy artistic director of the Hebel Theater, the International Performing Arts Centre in Berlin. And Maria has also lectured in the area of performing arts at various international universities since 1984. So in this talk, Maria will be sharing some of her most beloved contemporary dance artists and performing arts experiences with us, giving us, I guess, some insight into why she feels these works are so important to the arts landscape today. So please join me in welcoming Maria.
Thank you very much, Jo. I hope it's not a misunderstanding if I don't go here, but I have to.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm not a dancer, but I like to move while speaking. Thank you very much for your interest, for coming here, and especially thanks to STRUT, to Agnes, Jo, Chloe, and Philippa to prepare this day for me. For me, it's I think, 8th time coming back to Perth. That means I'm a bit familiar with the situation here, and it's very great to be back. I would like to give you a bit of background information about my last 20 years of work in the arts, because especially for the artists I will meet next week, it might be good to know what my background is. I studied in an art school, became first of all a teacher in normal gymnasium school, but also started to work in the university. But I always parallel worked as an artist myself, as a photographer mainly, and as a stage and costume designer. I did that in the frame of a state theater that is clearly in Germany structure that comes from the 19th century. It has fixed ensembles, it has a very clear hierarchic structure, and it was for me a bit difficult to connect to this structure and also to just focus on the drama interpretation. In that time I worked in the theater, it was still classical drama. I got the chance when I moved to Berlin in '87 to work on the Cultural Capital Program. I don't know if you are familiar. In Europe we have this program for more than 30 years. Each year now, after the fall of the wall, at least 2, sometimes 3 cities are announced for 1 year to be cultural capital. There are extra funds from the European community, and the cities themselves invest a lot of money. Artists are very happy about this program. We, having done several capital programs, are not always very amused because partly money sinks somewhere where it's not artistic. However, it's a great chance for cities when they are announced to be a cultural capital, and Berlin was the cultural capital in '88, but not the capital, because it was in that time not German capital, it was just the European cultural city. If you understand, before it was our capital. However, I was invited to work with the director of the major program that was called Werkstatt Berlin, and that was Workshop Berlin. That was the idea not to have another big festival with highlights and fireworks, but really to invest sustainable into the arts. And the idea was to connect all different art forms, including design and rock music. That was quite new in the frame of our understanding of the arts, that is opera and that is classical music and that is visual arts, but design, fashion, rock music didn't belong to it. We tried to melt that and to connect each project that was presented with a kind of workshop. It could have been a lecture or an introduction to rehearsals, or it was a whole rehearsal process. And in fact, that was the time when I met Agnès Mechelen, because she was in Berlin.
I was producing at the time a project which was part of
this festival program, and in fact it was Ansico,
from the
a French
southwest of France.
choreographer, and we invited them to do an outdoor piece in front of the Berlin Reichstag. That became already very famous with that piece later. Christo and his wife came to wrap the Reichstag, and today it's the parliament with the famous dome where the people can walk in a circulation in this glass dome up and can have a look into the parliament, the working parliament. That was Werkstatt Berlin. It was an intercultural, international, cross-genre, big festival, and it was the base for the foundation of the Hebel Theater, one of the most beautiful classical style, Italian style theaters in Berlin, and it was brand new, the idea to turn it into an international producing house with no ensemble. And for 10 years we haven't been accepted as a theater. For the most of the people it was just a touring place, although we really produced, co-commissioned, and we started with Robert Wilson, with the Rooster Group from New York. We really invented into new artists that have been completely unknown, like Suchirdas, Rafael Sanzio. I'm quite sure they have been here at least once, if not twice, in the Perth Festival. Richard Maxwell, I just asked if you know him later, we will meet him, one of the big stars from the New York theater world, elevator repair service. It was also the place where we invested into visual artists to reach the stage, to come on stage. It was Marina Abramovic who did her biography the first time on a theater stage. It was William Kentridge with the Handspring Puppet Company. You might be familiar with him. I think the West Australian Gallery did an exhibition. Christian Boltanski, Ilya Kavakov, all people, they are very known in the arts world, but they never worked before in the theater. Matthew Barney, I could present them later, him in the Zurich Festival. Musicians like Steve Reich, Robert Ashley, Phil Glass, John Cale started to work in the Hebel Theater, and last but not least, the dance was extremely of importance. Coming from the Werkstatt Berlin in the cultural capital, the foundation of the Tanzwerkstatt, that is still a very important partner. The dancers between you will know the Tanzwerkstatt and the festival Tanz im August that turned into the International Dance Festival. It's still today the big event in Berlin that is not only in the Hebel Theater, but it embraces the other theaters. Opera houses are collaborating. That means it's a huge, big international festival, and over the last 20 years, nearly every known company runs through these festivals, and mainly we like to get them the first time on stage. That means we as curators risk very much to invest into artists they haven't been known at that time, and the audience really went with us. In the moment we started to bring famous companies, they complained, the journalists complained and said, we have seen that already. It's like in the other festival here and there. That means it's a complete different scenario than you have here in Perth and in Australia, I would say. During this time of the Hebel Theater, we also run a big festival, Theater der Welt, and that gave us as curators the chance to travel the whole world. In the beginning of the 90s, this so-called post-dramatic theater was very much focused on Europe and America, also East Europe, but we didn't really travel Africa, China, Asia, and Australia, and that was my first meeting with Australia in '96, I think, Adelaide Festival, Barry Kosky. Later I came nearly every festival year here. Barry, who is now the director of the Komische Opera in Berlin, and I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a big star for opera here in Australia. He was the Adelaide Festival director. Robin Archer, who became a very close friend. I think you all know her name. She's now doing this centennial in Canberra. That means I started a very close relation with Australia. And the Australia Council allowed me, first of all, the government invited me. That was really my most luxury trip I ever had, was business class and such a bunch of vouchers for cats and the best hotels. I never stayed in there. And we could have at least produced one real good art piece with their money. But they invested it into me, and I felt responsible, and I think I fulfilled the responsibility to bring a lot of companies from Australia to Europe. I want to list, I then stopped working in the Hebbel Theatre in 2001, as you said, took over for 6 years in the International Festival in Zurich, in Switzerland. Also cross-genre, different formats, outdoors, indoors, and especially the outdoor side was difficult for me, coming from an inside theatre place, and the Australians offered me the best projects. I could invite Lisa Lin and the Elysian Ensemble. I don't know if you have heard of her, with a fantastic opera piece, Vanessa Mutton-Gray in the leading role. The Theft of Sita was Nigel Jemisin directing, Balinese and Australian puppets playing, and the Australian Arts Orchestra, the Museum of Modern Oddities, incredible outdoor performative installations, acrobats, for me really a new territory, this acrobatic issue, fantastic, and Marugeko and the Stalker productions, you might know her, Rachel Swain and Dahlia Pilgrim. She was in Zurich and with Burning Daylight, and we come back to Dahlia. She's from Rome, if you know her or not, this indigenous fine dancer and choreographer. But last but not least, I had a focus in Zurich on dance with Helen Hurwitson and Rose Worby and Lucy Guerin and others. That means I tried to really see what's up in Australia, and I'm very happy that I had the chance 1.5 years ago to make a bit more research here in Paris, and I'm delighted to have found fantastic artists here. As you of course know that there are fantastic artists. Since 2008, I'm independent. I worked on a big project for 2 years in Istanbul. That was then the cultural capital. I worked on various exhibitions, and in fact, actually, I'm involved in a Wagner exhibition. Richard Wagner was something I didn't want to touch for many reasons, but via my meetings with international artists and their interest in Wagner, somehow it opened the door to Wagner. And in fact, I'm now asked by the Akademie der Künste to add to the members. They show their works on Wagner some international positions, and I could invite Pilar Marta Dupont, Terran Gill, and Thea Constantino. You know them under the name Hold Your Horses, and Zoe Pepper is here, who did this Gold of Heart project. They will be involved in this exhibition. That means I have this constant back and forth situation. Now let's come to the issue for today. I was asked to speak about the most important artists. I have to say the artists I work in this moment with are the most important. And then it's very hard after 25 years to say they are the most important. Nonetheless, there are some icons that I thought they could be of interest here for you to be presented, and I choose 3 of them. Sarah Michelson, the British dancer choreographer, is the big queen of underground of dance in and visual arts in New York. It's Michael Laub, who says himself he's a European. He's in fact was brought up in Antwerpen, but neither as a Flanders person nor as a Belgian. That means he very much insists to say, I'm a European. And Koen Augustijnen, the Belgian choreographer, director, you are eventually familiar with because he worked with Marugeko on Burning Daylight, I think, or which, no, Crying Bed, I don't remember which, but he's in fact actually working with Dahlia Pilgrim on her new piece, Gudia Gudia. I think they three have a lot in common, although they are artistically completely different from each other. They are all very consequent in their work and a kind of radical. They are all thinking and making their researches on human conditions, and they suffer from the reality of human conditions. They are, in a way, all very political, because they grab essential problems of our living together and not being able to do it peaceful. They are very much looking for authenticity and sincerity in their works. They love crazy stuff. They're very humorous. Michael Laub has even the tendency to irony. And they have a lot of fun with it, what they do, even if it grabs tough issues. And they all believe completely in the possibility of the expression of the body. They are not, in that sense, only dancers, you will see it. They all have a big understanding of the spatial needs of a stage that contains the set, the costumes, the movements, of course, but also the music, the light, all these aspects that make a dance piece a kind more than only the movement, something like the Gesamtkunstwerk that appeared. Are you familiar with this German word? I think that is, what is the English translation for Gesamtkunstwerk?
Total work of art.
It's a work. Yeah, and I saw it in different critics for the three that it appears very much there. That means movements are, of course, important. They all come from dance backgrounds, but they all carry a narrative. They all have this kind of political engagement, and they all share the interest in all the aspects of the theatrical. And I found out when I prepared this little talk that Sarah, in the last years, Sarah Michelson, is very attracted to work with children. Although she's not in the social sense working with children, but really as an artistic source. Michael Laub is definitively addicted to women, and especially to beautiful and sexy women. And Koen Augustijnen focused very much in the last years on men and men's problems and fears and pains. And I think that was interesting that in the end I have these three different focuses. Let's start with Sarah Michelson. She's already here with us. This artwork is part of her work she did in the Whitney Museum. And it's a kind of portrait of her, and she's overwatching the whole scenario that she designed there. As I said, she collaborated very much with Baryshnikov. And as I said, she's extreme, she's obsessive and radical and very consequent. And I have a little text that might give you an insight. Sorry for the fuck at the ass, but that's how she is. And I think it describes absolutely who she is. She is very honest in that what she's doing, and everyone agrees she is as good in choreography than in scenography, in costumes, and in light design. She's really creating the whole scene. And her works are so difficult, and she is so particular and consequent in that what she needs for the setup, that she's very seldom touring, which is a pity, but in New York, with her consequence, she could develop to be one of the leading figures in the art scene. I met her first in the beginning of 2000, and I saw her piece Group Experience and Shadow Man 1 and 2, and could bring these two productions to Zurich. but I think this is another phrase from her. Ready? Even though she understands that it's very difficult what she's doing, she could become very famous, as I just said. And here we see her very typical, creating a costume for herself and having her own little audience. But this is her background. She comes really from ballet, from tough training, and she's still very fascinated by well-trained dancers she works with. And here you can already see she's obsessed with these patterns of the design. We will find that, again, this is her, if you compare the ballet where she's coming from and then her personal movements she developed in a costume that has nothing to do any longer with ballet, but is the same precise made for the movements as before this dress of a classical dancer. I could bring her with the piece Group Experience, and this is one photo of this, and you can see in the back Greg Zuccolo, whom we later meet in the Michael Laub performances. That means there is this little scene with a very strong artist. Here you can see the addiction with space. When she is choosing to set up a performance, first of all, she chooses the space. And the Group Experience and Shadowman performances that she made have been particularly made for the spaces. And first of all, she designs the space. And it's mainly site-specific. That is one aspect why it's hard to tour. This Shadowman this is an excerpt of Shadowman. It's on one side the declination and the research on the space, and on the other hand, the dancer in the space and the dancer in a group. That is very much an interest for her to make researches on the behavior of a lonesome dancer and the group experience. That's the title of this piece, Group Experience. It's very much based on the knowledge we need each other, but we destroy and do not support each other, or we support each other, but in the end we are alone. I have to talk about it because the video is so bad. I have one copy made from a video, but since we don't have that much time, I would say I have this video for the ones that are very interested and we can make copies. But I rather would try to explain via some photos. Her later work she was invited in Cardiff to work there, and she did not know why to go to Cardiff, but then her grandma was ill and she was happy from New York to be there for a while. Very personal reason, she decided, okay, I make my research in Cardiff. It's the Chapter Arts Cardiff. I don't know if you ever had contact with them. They are also in the international network. And then she thought, I visit the ballet school. And there she was extremely surprised by the little girls, especially the little girls, being so obsessive with the perfection of this historical format. That means being really a contemporary dancer, but with her background of ballet, she's still very fascinated that you run as a child through this hard school of making yourself perfect with the body. And she decided to work with kids from that school, and it took her nearly 2 years to set up back and forth between New York and Cardiff to set up this piece, Dover Beach. And here you can see again these patterns. They will be again and again in her pieces. She's somehow obsessed with this design. And there's one of the girls, and I think, yeah, there are 2 of these girls. It's incredible how she could develop with these trained little ballet dancers really an own language, and some of them have been so obsessed that they really went with her. It became a huge, big success in New York, and in fact she cooperated with Peter Drangel, composition. He made the composition, and he's the pianist of the performance. That means the collaboration with other artists is always of big importance for all the three. The next piece she did it's not this, she did together with Richard Maxwell. I just mentioned him, this New York guy, drama writer and director. And I just heard from you that you are now collaborating with Sue Peacock as a writer and a performer. These collaborations, they are very much up in the air in this moment, and I think they both developed very well this piece Devotion. You can see maybe excerpts in YouTube. The point is Sarah refuses to make really videos, and I asked her to send me something. She said, no. The group experience copy I have is made from a secret made video. That's why the quality is not good, and that's why I only can now refer to this, but on Vimeo I think one can see more. Devotion was this piece she did together with Richard Maxwell, and after that she was invited to the Whitney Museum Biennial, and it's the first time that in the Biennial in the Whitney Museum, the huge big space of 5,000 square feet is given to the performance artist. It was just on in March, and she did a 90 minutes performance, and you can see there is this strange figure in it, and she made this surface on the ground, and you see this other situation there. We have again her patterns, and in the review I could read that it was 90 minutes exhausting dance performance, but very visual art performance, and she got an award, I think, for this piece. That means really an artist I think we have to keep an eye on. I would like to stop with this here because I only have 10 minutes for two others that we have sometimes to talk, and please interrupt. If something is not clear, just let's open the dialogue. This is her, the last image, during the opening in the Whitney Museum, and I must say, it looks so crazy as Björk looked with her swan costume in the Oscar celebration, and that's how she is. Now, Michael Laub. I always say he looks a bit like a drug dealer. In fact, he's a very serious artist, and he was the one who introduced me to Sarah Michelson. Interesting for me that a lot of the artists I really adore, they would always recommend other artists that I see them. And I think this is a very generous and very necessary argument for artists to help each other via advising to see another company's work. And I asked him to be a co-curator of one of the festivals. That's how I could bring, as the first festival director, Sarah Michelson to Europe. Michael Laub, I worked with him for 22 years now. And we are, I think he's a very important advisor for me, and on the other hand, I tried as much as possible to help him make his products produced and presented, and in fact was one of his biggest piece, the Choto Masala Samba, where I will show you a video later, that was invited by Robin Archer to the Melbourne Festival. Strange enough, not very well received, as it was in Europe, hysterically positive received, but I think it was the major problem that Robin Archer had to put it in a much too big venue, and then sometimes it falls apart. You know all about this major problem, to find the right venues. Michael Laub started his artistic career in the 70s. He's not a young boy, as we can see. Between 75 and 80, he had with a friend together the Maniac Productions company, and they did mainly performances and have been more known as visual artists. But then it was very punk, very underground, and very trash, but very well received. He worked in different galleries internationally. And in fact, Marina Abramovic, and Joe told me that she's very obsessed with Marina Abramovic. He saw his work, it was quite influenced by him, and grew a very close friendship, and they worked together on different projects. I don't know if you are familiar with Marina Abramovic, legendary performance artist lately in New York, in the MoMA, with her dialogue project. From 1980, he started his company, Remote Control, and decided clearly to step into theater, which is interesting because for him a very conservative structure, but the place where he could share his interest in live art with an audience that was used to live art. Galleries was always an exception, but he chose to be in the theater. And in fact, he was invited with one of his early theater pieces to the Venice Biennial, long before Marina Abramovic. He is addicted to film. He's maybe the best archivist of film. He's very into literature. He's very much into political issues. And his addiction, his real addiction is women. That's why some of his performances carry the undertitle, the subtitle, Heartbreak, because partly his work is autobiographic. He's obsessed with film. Ingmar Bergman, for example, that was a kind of beginning in his career, was watching movies that brought him to Sweden, because he was so amazed by Ingmar Bergman that he moved to Sweden. Also because of the beautiful women in Sweden. And you can see the first performance I saw in '94. It was rough. It's this kind of black and white style, although the curtain there is red. We see it in the next photo. But of course the two women there are Swedish girls. And the right one, Carlotta Engelkes, became his muse for many years. He worked on many, many projects with her. And she toured quite often Australia because she was around with Onken Sen and with Raimund Hoge. Film is of importance in terms of the visuals he gets from there and the narrative, but especially because of the editing process, and that is very influential for his kind of performing arts, to stop, to cut a movement and then to start with another part in the performance, the narrative, the private narrative, the performed narrative, and then the dance. This cutting process is very much influenced by film. And as I said, literature has been an important source for various projects he did. And music, he maybe collaborated with Larry Steinbachek. He was one of the founders of Brodsky Beat. I don't know if they're still known. Very important is the casting process. That means he works with professionals, but also with non-professionals. And he's delicious in making castings. I could experience it now in at least 8 productions. And in the beginning, it's something like asking 120 to 150 people to come, and in the end he has a cast of 6, but they are perfect. And they are in fact not replaceable, because the source is on one side the body capacity. They mainly, a lot of them are dancers or can move very well, they can speak very well, and they have to offer personal stories that are so interesting that they work on stage. Because he's very much interested in this thin line between privacy, personal stories, and the art piece. It's a difficult walk on this thin line, and sometimes I have the impression he's able to force the artist to be so intimate that you never can experience on the private level so intimate. And this seems to be a contradiction, to be on stage so intimate, as you barely can experience them privately, but he keeps it really on this artistic level. He has a very, very clear understanding who has the capacity to be on stage. Let's go a bit through the different works. We had Ruff. 97, he created this piece, Planet Lulu, reference to Wedekind's Lulu and the movie that was made in the late 20s by Willem Pabst with a famous Louis Brooke in it. And Louis Brooke had this haircut, and that's what he copies, but he did not have one Lulu, he had 4 Lulus. And the chairs you can see here have been designed by Maria Magdalena. Next piece, in '98, 1 year later, is Frankula. As you can hear, it's a mix of Frankenstein and Dracula, also reference to the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 1818, and Dracula, Bram Stoker, 1889-7, and again we could have seen a lot of movies made from this material, and this movement is definitively coming from one of the Frankenstein movies. The next piece is Hans Christian Andersen project, and there is a subtitle, Tales and Costumes. He made a very intense research on the person Hans Christian Andersen. That means the fairy tales have been just the second part. The main base for that piece is the personal story of Hans Christian Andersen. He was a weird, strange person, and in this photo you can see how Michael Laub imagined him behaving, because he was a dancer. Hans Christian Andersen wanted to be a dancer, but no one wanted to see him. And one big party, he was invited in a private house. He was completely drunk and stood on the table and started to dance, and of course everyone thought he's just nuts. And he never got an offer to become a dancer, but then he became this writer. And he liked to make shadow cuts. There's a whole collection of shadow cuts. And they have been the source for the costumes and also for the set. That means this combination of really taking the fairy tales, of course they appear here in that piece, but it's more the author himself with his problems and his references into life that is of big interest. I remember the talk with Zoe on a future project, is going into much deeper into personal, to find a personal access to a writer or a filmmaker, and to describe his artistic work via the personal. That is something Michel is interested in. Beside these dance pieces that refers to writers, he did 7 different projects. They are called the Portrait series. In the portraits, he casts people, actors and non-actors. For example, the first one took place in the Schauspielhaus in Hamburg, classical ensemble theater, and he was asked by the new director to present the cast with personal stories. And he said, I'm doing it, but I only choose 6 or 7 actors, and the rest I want to have the cleaning woman or the ticket seller, box office, or someone from the director's office. And in the end, it was a kind of journey through the ensemble of the house, including the chauffeur of the director and the cleaning woman. In fact, she did the most beautiful dance with a brush on the stage. And it turned out that the non-professionals have been much more impressive than the actors from the house. He did different of these portraits, so one in Istanbul where I could invite him, at the Burg in Vienna, with punk kids, migration kids in Rotterdam, and so on. And last but not least, the portrait of Marina Abramovic that she did in the second version on her oeuvre. He directed her on that biography. The last piece he did is Death, Dance and Some Talks. Interesting, death will appear again now with Koen Augustijnen, obviously a theme that starts to be of big interest when these guys become older and they get closer and they have loss in their families, and in fact it was his mother's death that inspired him. Here he refers to Camus, the plague, but he also puts a lot of personal stories from all these dancers on stage. There's again Greg Zucolo, nearly all the performance here is the actress here on the right side. She's a student of Marina Abramovic, a performance artist herself. Here they try to fly, and here they really try to say to the death, come on, let's play with each other. We come to the piece where I would like to show you excerpts can we go ahead?
Yeah, I mean,
The point is I would
Yeah,
like to
yeah,
show
yeah.
you, I would like to show you 10 minutes from the DVD, but then we have another artist. Can we do that?
You're happy to stay a bit longer? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's.
This sentence here from Goethe was a kind of headline, and we can see here he tries to mix, he says, Goethe's Sorrows of the Young Weather is the base for this piece. Do you know about this? The young man being in love, heartbreak, based on the heartbreak he had himself, the fifth, that's the subtitle of this piece. Goethe wrote this piece in the 70s of the 18th century, and it was a big issue because it was against the conventions, but it was a big success, one of the most published books in Germany in that time, and there was a kind of wave of suicides because this young man who had the heartbreak committed suicide in the book. And it was an example for a lot of young men to commit suicide. That means the Sorrows of the Young Werther are very much into the German history, but he said heartbreaks are universal, and in that time he was addicted to Bollywood and the Bollywood movies, and he said, I mix it. Total Masala Slammer is the heartbreak story, and I have actors from New York and from the Faroe Islands, from Denmark and from Germany and from Belgium, and I mix it with Indian people. And you can see that here this kind of photo montage puts these different angles together. And one of the journalists wrote this. And I just switch a bit through. This is 3 of the 5 Kathak dancers. Kathak is a classical Indian dance. With the classical dances in India, it's quite difficult to cooperate because normally they are not allowed to step out of their traditions. Kathak is eventually the most open and is in a way the most flexible and kind of erotic. That's why it's very much used in the Bollywood movies. We can hear later the sound and rhythm, and you will, if you are familiar with Bollywood movies, it will become obvious. And this is the total masala slammer. You have these Indian girls who are not allowed to show anything of their body, and then this American actress sitting there in the sari naked. This is this incredible set design. He had 8 different silk curtains, and they have been constructed in the way that they fall down, and it looks really like a waterfall. It's an amazing idea, simple idea, but it works really fantastic. The problem is if one fall down, you cannot lift it up again. That means it's quite an expensive situation, and you can see she's just in love, and this curtain is falling behind her, washing away. This is one scene of the Indians. They just married, and they are on honeymoon in Hawaii. That means we have even in this musical a scene taking place in Hawaii. It's a 2 hours, 10 minutes performance, and it's really a huge big piece. We only will see 10 minutes. Here you can see his typical dance movements he could put into this show, and of course the Western dancers could show very much emotions. Comparing the Kathaks, they stay in their tradition. This is the last image of this show, and I'm now putting in the video, the DVD. And I would really like to go for 10 minutes. What did I have to do to escape?
Just press escape.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then
And now we have to wait till the DVD is in. You see Venice behind it? Sorry, let me take some time. say this is the typical movements, but of course he mixes already some of the Indian dance in it. And this stage, you see this screen will become very important. First of all, it's a very Indian thing to have these scaffoldings where they do the advertisement. You can use it for original videos from India. The curtain you have seen and the chairs referred to. She's the master of the Kathak dancers, and she gives the rhythm of Kathak, and she had to give the permission that the dancers could go with Michael Laub. For that, he had to stay with her 3 months. Her name is Koen, the master, and she's based in Gujarat, where all these dancers have been trained. Is this purely Kathak, or has he modified it? In the beginning, it's pure Kathak, and then with her permission, he could work with them even further. Kathak. That means this is the prologue of this 2 hours, 10 minutes performance, and you see all the elements that he will use later in the total masala mixer cocktail.
What year was this, Maria?
This was 2001. And it came to Melbourne in 3, I think. Here is our main dancer actor. Okay, there was the irony towards this heartbreak kitsch thing, and now we are into the emotion. Laura is the dancer, but he casted her because she also had such a fantastic voice. sorrows expressed into different cultures. I would stop here now because time is running. I had another part I would like to show you, but we don't have time.
Is this one for Japanese you can copy for some people?
All the DVDs I have with me, also others of shows of Michel and Koen Augustijnen, we want to copy and we want to leave in
Yes,
the
we'll keep
archive.
a collection of what we can copy in the
Yeah.
office. So
Because I think this is really worth it to see the whole, all of it. Okay, now I have to learn how to do this here and to come back here. Ah, sorry. Next. Koen Augustijnen. I told you he's the dancer and choreographer of the Ballet C, famous company from Belgium, Alain Platel's company, but he has these partner choreographers. Koen can also look back to quite a big oeuvre as dancer and choreographer, and he worked, as I already said, with Stalker and later with Maru Gecko together on various projects that have been here, I think premiered. One was premiered here in Paris in the festival because it was mainly done in Brune with a company. Maru Gecko is placed there. Koen is very much involved into a critical discourse about our nowadays problems, migration, being a stranger, being disrooted, can I say that in English? Unrooted. He's very much into the research of the human conditions as the others, but displaced, the displaced in all different formats. He does not have fear to put fear and pain as an issue on the stage, and as I said, he's mainly working on this through with men because that's the closest to him. Of course, he has mixed casts, but the major projects I want to introduce you to is very much this understanding of the difficulty as a man today to manage your life with all the pressure you have, and with, what is the word of that? What is that? If you are constantly under pressure to show how strong you are, and not to be able as a man to show how fragile you are and how painful life is and how fearful your life is. He has a personal history with classical music. His father was a composer, and he's absolutely addicted to Baroque music. He shares that with his main partner, Steve Dujardin, who's a countertenor, and he performs in many of his performances. He very often has live music, live orchestra in his pieces. Purcell is one of the main musicians, but it's also, and with Purcell and others, Purcell wrote opera pieces, but there's also sacred music, but there's also Baroque musicians like Charpentier and Couperin he works with. I think this photo of him is very typical because it could be interpreted as a violent act between two men, but in the same moment it's full of tenderness. If you see his face, it could also be a hug, and this contradiction he very much works on. One of his not first pieces, but one piece I could show in Zurich, and that's why I choose it. It's import-export. As you can see from the set, he always works with artists. Could be a container landscape in the harbor or any kind of not fixed home situation, homeless situation. And if you see this one dancer, of course he does not have crouches, but he performs it there. He very much goes into edges. Hip hop is a source for him as classical dance, but he was not trained as a classical dancer. He started moving together with Alain Platel, and you can see that in his body language. He is also kind of liberated from a classical training. I don't say that in a positive or negative, not a valuable argument, but he's maybe more free to just design his own movements. You see another image of import-export, these dancers like flying objects. It's very much, it's really going to a limit of the body. And it's very dangerous. That means the dancers are very dependent on each other. The group is very important. And this is the final image of this import-export where a lot of violence between the people is shown and also this need of each other. This is one of the pieces that touched me the most. After the death of his father, that he was very connected to, he produced this piece, Au-delà, and this is one of the photos he uses, and he has a back projection of it. And it reminds me very much to this Aboriginal photographer, what's her name? Tracy Moffat. I don't know if he saw these photos, maybe he was influenced by her because he worked here. What I want to show you excerpts of this piece, Bash. Bash has the theme of fear, definitely fear in life. These six men on stage, they find each other, they hug each other, they hurt each other, and they help each other. And this all is guided via Steve Dujardin's Purcell music. And Steve worked together with a composer, piano player Guy van Nuiten, who composed partly the music beside the Hallelujah of Purcell and other pieces by Purcell. Fear of failure, phobia, fear of commitment. Would I say that? If you engage with someone, the commitment, fear of age. That is the issue in this piece, Bash. And I read somewhere it's a dialogue between today's cynicism and harshness and playfulness. It's always both sides he's dealing with. And you can see some of the photos. In fact, the man there behind is the singer. He's always part of the performance. And what you can see here, Bash means Plane in German. That is this plastic thing, I don't know the English word, is that plane? There's an object covered with this plastic thing. And it could be anything. It could be a monument that fall and it's covered, or it can be rubbish, or it can be whatever hidden things. This huge big, that's from the other performance, sorry. Huh?
Tarpaulin.
Tarpaulin?
That's what we call
Yeah.
it.
This is from import-export, sorry. But this is part of this Bash piece, and I stopped talking and put the DVD because it's much more showing what it is about.
Sorry, this is quite temperamental, this test.
Just a few minutes.
Yeah.
We have just a few minutes,
Yeah.
okay?
Is that okay, Maria? Just a few
Of
minutes?
course. Or should we stop here?
No.
Just let me see.
Please, if you have questions we can do outside maybe.
Yeah.
I think this video is so incredible, but it takes time. These first.
We're all hanging in pretty well.
I would rather. I don't know how to get this away. It's technical.
Move the cursor.
It's cool. Again, he's always in the pieces. The piano player. But it's a bit as if something happened and everything was covered and they try to make it alive again. Clean up. Doing the cleaning now for 4 minutes. I will switch forward, but for me it's very interesting. It's such an image that we normally connect to women on stage cleaning. It's cantor and it appears in so many performances. It's the men, they clean up and they prepare for the performance. I will go forward, even though it would be very interesting to see that. Sorry, in this moment. sorry.
Yes,
The lonesome could be a homeless person, crawls out, and then the group starts slowly to interact, and it's incredible how they start to embrace, to hug, to force each other, to beat each other, to make the most beautiful balance acts where they really have to trust each other. It's a declination through this being a man in confrontation with others, with all the colors that a relation between men can have. I stop here. It does not look very hopeful, but in the end, it's the music that makes it extremely beautiful, and it's in the end the image, how they embrace each other, not in a kitsch way, but it's the possibility of coming together. And that's the moment I have to stop. What an image. One moment I would have tried to give you something more beautiful. But I thank you very much, and you can realize we could go ahead, and I think it's packed of material that I would like to show you further. But as we said, we can copy everything, and you should have access if you want to see.
What's the music in that final scene that you described? Purcell.
It's Purcell, and as far as I know from the Hallelujah, I couldn't find any text in the internet, and I had no time to go to the music shop, but it's clear if it's a Hallelujah, it's a very sacred text.
Maria Magdalena, are you happy to stay for a few questions if anyone
I'm
has some
staying the
idea?
whole evening if you want. I'm very happy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you want to say what your best.
Well, I was just under the impression that unfortunately we do only have the space sort of for the hour, so I was very conscious that we do need to wrap up soon. But if people would like to stay and we're able to stay, then I think, yes, if you have any questions, now is definitely the time. But also, some of the artists here will be seeing Maria during the week, so that could be a good opportunity to follow up, because, I mean, I certainly have questions, and I guess I'll just take this opportunity now just to thank you so much for giving us this insight, and also the formal acknowledgements of DCA support and the Australia Council support for bringing Maria out to do this professional development program with our members has been, we're very grateful for that, obviously. So if you guys are happy to stay, I might just quickly duck out and make sure that we can stay, and then let's open the floor, and anyone who has a question on anything, now's the time.
My guess is that we may still have about 10 minutes. So
Okay, well I'll do that.
So, yeah, thanks Maria Magdalena for sharing so openly your love for these artists. I don't want to start necessarily if you are willing to ask some questions. I was wondering when you have to make choices when you curate events between the artists which you have followed for a long time, because what I see through the artists you have chosen is this faith in following up their career as well. How do you balance the discovery of a new artist with those that you have known for a long time?
I have been in the lucky situation to work 13 years in the Hebel Theatre. It was a whole year's programming. And then 6 years the Festival Zürcher Theaterspektakel, where we presented up to 40 companies each year. That means I had quite a fantastic platform to present new artists. That was always my main interest, to really find the new talents. And when I was invited to big festivals, I tried in the first night to find someone from the off scene to escape from the official festivals and to see, because I know that the official festivals only have a little space for their local raising young artists or not ready artists. And I have been, I think, quite successful with that. And it's such a long list of names we could bring to the Hebel and to Zurich that haven't been on an international stage at all, even not on a stage. Chinese artists, they never had a stage before. And they are still on the market. That means this is one something of course I like very much, and sometimes it's the feeling, oh, okay, you did right. Other people are also interested in, but this continuously following is the same important, because a lot of them don't have a platform in their own countries. And what I showed here, they are more or less now, they are on the market, respected, but we did not speak about the rising stars, but the most influential, because in the consequence of these artists and in the variation of that what they do, more radical or more sensible or more political to that direction or more into human social context, they all are very seriously working with the genre dance to somehow react on our society today, and they still all believe that you can do something. None of them would say, I can change the world, but at least they use the platform very seriously to communicate about our daily problems. And it contains, of course, the dream that in the future something can change, but none of them really believes it. Nonetheless, they don't give up. I don't know if it answers your question.
More other questions?
You're a dramaturge. Yeah.
The point is, in a classical German sense, the dramaturg was very much in partnership to a director and was the one who gave the director the scientific background for his performances. Dramaturgy today is something completely different, and I think here it's much more open. And I never would have said 20 years ago I'm a dramaturg. Today I would say I'm a dramaturg because I cooperate with artists on different levels within their productions. As a teacher in art schools, I work frequent in a theater school in Norway, where you also can say coaching. That means dramaturgy is a very open term. If it goes into the collaboration with Michael Laub and the work on the text, that would have been a classical dramaturgy in Germany. But today, with this cross-genre, sometimes I work psychologically. And it's also a kind of dramaturgy. That means, in that sense,
So in that sense, you're hands-on?
Sorry?
Well, in that sense, are you interventionalist? In that sense?
I don't
Well,
my English.
as a dramaturg,
Yeah.
So you work in collaboratively with the director?
Yeah, the point is that till
actually
today, I haven't been invited by a director to really be in the company, but there is a friend of mine from India, and she said, but you're a festival director, I cannot ask you. And I said, I would love to. In fact, I'm today much more interested to work with one company on one piece than to curate big festivals, but I didn't get the offer yet.
And as a curator, I guess, do you take quite a personal approach to that, to your responsibilities there, and connecting quite intimately with the artist where you can?
Yeah, this is definitively the work I do. I refuse to program in festivals or in exhibitions artists I don't know. I always looked for a personal connection, because I know judging in the arts is so personal, and I have to trust the people behind it. They can be crazy, or they can be like John Cale is really not he's such a bad boy, but he's a great artist. And it's not the question, do I love them, or is their style always mine, but I have to have this personal trust, and then collaboration as a curator can really work. And of course then, I never wanted to influence any art piece. That's why I haven't been involved as a dramaturg in performances, but over the years in long-term collaborations, for example with Michael Laub, I very often, of course, sit in rehearsals and even with Robert Wilson, and then there's feedbacks, and it's a kind of influential work. But I normally try to more support the artist in their format, and to learn from them, and to help them to find what they want to do, and less to put my own interest into it.
Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up because I was told sort of 5 minutes, about 5 minutes ago. so
What do they do if we just stay? They never let you in again.
Well, not just security guards tapping his toes. So, and maybe, you know, there's bars and coffee shops, and I'm sure, I don't know how tired Maria is, but
Yeah, and in
anyone does
fact,
want to
I'm here till
follow
Friday next week, and there's quite a lot of programs set up, but however, I'm here to talk to you, and if someone wants to have a meeting.
yeah, if anyone wants
If
to
it,
connect,
if it fits the schedule.
yes,
I would be
Maria does a
happy
great
to.
itinerary already, but there's little gaps, so if anyone would like to connect, then you can certainly talk to me and we can see what we can do. So